when I first saw To All the Boys I've Loved Before, who thought this was going to be a trilogy, Like maybe people who had read the book, and I don't know if the book even has like sequels, do they?
It does, yeah. I have to assume that Netflix was thinking about this in terms of trilogy. Like I think everything they do, they're thinking, could this be a trilogy? So I'm not surprised in the least that this became a trilogy. But nevertheless, considering how small scale the story is, it is impressive that this is a trilogy. But I'll let you speak more to that now.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's like you finish the first movie, and like Abby, you've only seen the first film, so it's just Will and I talking about this one, and like. You have to be wondering to yourself, well, what else is there? Like, where does the story go from here by the end of the first? We can lightly spoil the first film. It's mainly about a young woman played by Lana Condor. Her character is Lara Jean, and she has written these love letters to her crushes over the years. They all get sent out by her precocious little sister, and then things happen, and she gets into this like fake relationship with Noah Centineo's character, Peter Kavinsky, and I mean, come on, you know what the deal is, that they're going to, their fake relationship is maybe going to turn into a real one, isn't it?
What?
So, yeah.
I watched Bridgerton. I know how this works.
There you go. Yeah, Bridgerton be like, the formula must continue. But yeah, Abby, you saw just the first one. What was your take on that film?
I liked the first one fine. I thought it was cute. I am not against seeing numbers 2 and 3. I know they've gotten a pretty warm reception from fans and critics alike. I wouldn't call myself a rabid To All the Boys fan, but I appreciate it. I think it's nice to have cute, fun, romantic things to watch on Netflix when you're feeling that way.
Yeah. That was my, like, when I first saw the first one, we were at a different time in 2018. We were coming off of like a rom-com drought. Not that there weren't rom-coms, but they just didn't have that. We were just starting to get the more like cozy rom-coms that are still kind of artistically interesting to some degree. They're just a notch above like the Hallmark Channel kind of thing that just feels aggressively safe, like insultingly safe. And I like that first one a lot. I think it's the best of the trilogy, just because it's the most complete standalone film, and I think that gives it a lot of merit. The second film I thought was definitely a downgrade. I was like a B- on it, like not bad or anything. It just kind of goes to places that to this day are debated between John Negroni and Will Ashton. Included, did she pick the right boy? That kind of thing. I think Will. I don't want to give away your thoughts on that.
Well,
and I think yeah, go ahead.
I do think that John Ambrose was the way to go, and who am I to tell a young woman what she needs to do? But I mean, I think that was the better direction, in my opinion.
Which I don't understand, because Will Ashton has conceded on this very show that Noah Centineo's smile is enough to give a teenage Peter Parker radioactive spider powers. It's that powerful. Regardless, the second movie, of course, is just kind of a continuation of their love story. The third film, I think, is actually a bit better. So it actually kicks things off with we're kind of in the senior year, the spring of the senior year of our main characters, and Lara Jean and Peter are going strong, but there's a big wide world out there, and there's plenty of movies that are about what happens with the high school sweetheart relationship when they got to go off to college, and we find out there is a plan for them to go to the same school, but Lara Jean's kind of wondering, is that the right choice? Should I be, going to this school just because the boy is over here? Should I be going on a different adventure? And I actually found something kind of warm and satisfying about that direction of the story. One that I actually did feel like was a good progression from the first one, whereas the second one I feel like was just kind of stalling for time, almost, of like, drawing out, this love story to a weird degree. What did you think though, Will Ashton?
Well, I'm the opposite on you on the second film, in that I think the second one is a noted upgrade from the first film, with the exception with the exception that I think the first film is the best directed of these. Like, I don't think the direction is necessarily poor in the second or third film, but it's not quite as strong or not quite as inspired, I think, as the first movie comparatively. But otherwise, I think the second movie has a little bit more developed stakes. Like, I think the relationships are a little bit more interesting there. It kind of avoids some of the formulas while also playing to some others that I think are amusing. But then again, I have to think back on when I saw the second film, and that one I had the chance to see in theaters with an audience. And, I got to see, everyone kind of getting sucked into it and getting taken by the romance of it. And I am wondering, even though these are, like you said, like kind of comfort food films for Netflix in a good way, that I am wondering if they are kind of meant to be for an audience. Like you're kind of supposed to be watching these with a bunch of people and getting sucked into them. But I don't know. I mean, I can only speak for the experiences I had. But I will say that this movie, I think, similar to you, like I was a little put off at first, the beginning, because like you were suggesting, like this is probably the first time where a trilogy capper has the least amount of stakes in a trilogy. Like this third film, it's mostly pretty grounded. Like it's established that Peter and Laura Jean are pretty settled in their relationship. It's not so much a matter of will they, but rather are they willing to go the extra mile or extra several miles to cement their relationship with long distance. Which I think, at first I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't really seem as interesting to me to follow that part of their relationship. But I agree with you that I think once I settled into its groove and kind of got along with it, I was willing to indulge the film, and I think get sucked into it because it is a lot more grounded, a lot more character focused, and it's not quite as playing into some of the contrived stuff that we saw in the first two films. Not to say that it's not without some of that stuff, but I think it's willing to avoid some of those trappings to be a lot more about their central relationship and just kind of focus on their performances. And, like you said, kind of developing some sense of finality to it that doesn't feel as extensive or trying to like kind of route this out for another film or two. And I think by the end, I think most of these movies, or I guess all of them, are about the same level in terms of like quality, but I think this one I like a little bit more in the first, but not as much as the second one. But by and large, I think they're all pretty decent films, and they're not my favorite trilogy by any stretch of the imagination. But I think what they're able to do, they do well, and that's, I think, primarily thanks to the lead performance from, I forget the actress's name, but
Lana Condor.
Lana Condor, and I think she's really the key to these movies working because her performance is so bubbly and endearing and personable in a way that I think is able to help gloss over some of the shortcomings of the storytelling and make this character feel fully fleshed out and someone you want to root for despite kind of the low stakes that are happening with her character. But yeah, I mean, I think it's fine for what it is. That's pretty much where I land on by and large.
I think, first of all, that it's kind of amusing, going to break the fourth wall here, that like Abby is sitting here as these two hopeless romantic dudes are like arguing about a romantic comedy.
I mean, I wasn't going to say anything, but yes, it is a little odd, but that's okay. You do you.
Hey, I mean, but that is kind of indicative of like what I think is really nice about these films is the fact that like while we were like Will and I were kind of watching this at the same time because friendship goals, but it was one of those things where we're literally like arguing and like we're so invested in these characters. Like I'm putting into Google, it's like, okay, but if she goes to this school, like it's not that long of a drive. Okay, like without traffic, she can get there. Like it's silly stuff like that I think is what endears me the most to this, that I feel like that connection. I think it is because of Lana Condor's performance, but also just the direction of this thing. It doesn't infuse or it doesn't force like high stakes into it, but it instead introduces, like Will said, like the seemingly low stakes of like, okay, well, will this work long distance? And like, are they going to get what they want? But then it adds like some actual layers to it. I think those layers come in the form of, we see that like, so far, Peter Kavinsky has been kind of a perfect boyfriend character. He's endlessly supportive, and it hasn't examined too many of his flaws, which I found, that was one of my main criticisms in the second film, is like, it's almost like the films are too scared to make him, because he's so likable. It's like they don't want him to be too much of a jagoff. But then in this film, there's this new complexity added of like, there actually is a flaw to how supportive he is. There is a drawback to that, and that's his he has abandonment issues, and we learn a little bit more of like how some of his family life actually does speak to why he is so loyal, why he is so supportive, and how that can actually create a toxic aspect of this relationship that could poison it. And I when I was watching the film and that happened, I was like, man, this is a lot more insightful than I was expecting. I was kind of thinking this would be sort of like a victory laps movie that's like, we're just going to really cover the fact that people really like these movies isn't that fun, and then just have a big party of a movie and that's it. But instead, they actually took a few interesting risks. I mean, it's not a risky movie overall, but I still found myself pretty entertained and moved by these crazy kids and what they're gonna do next. I gotta say, I think this is a really good trilogy, and I think you're right, Will, that it's all three films are pretty similar in quality. So that's it. That's my full take on this film. I mean, I'm just gonna put my grade out there. I am a solid B, like I'm a high B minus. I think the first film B, second film solid B minus, third film high B minus. They're all kind of in the same little zone though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think moved is a word that came to mind for me, but I do think, like you said, there is something weirdly kind of gratifying about being invested in this relationship that feels, at this point, fairly lived in and sincere. And I do think that while people give Noah, is it Cento, or how do you pronounce
Centineo.
it? Centineo. I think people give him a lot of gruff because he plays kind of the same character in a bunch of things. Admittedly, I haven't seen his other movies outside of this, I think, except for Charlie's Angels, but
Perfect Date is the other one that I think
I didn't see that one
to.
Right, but I will say, I mean, like, I don't think he's an amazing actor or anything, but I think of the three films, this is probably his best performance, and I think it's partly because, like you said, he's given a little bit more grounded stakes. His character's a little bit more fleshed out beyond just being like the almost comically perfect boyfriend at times, to the point where like he does kind of feel like this like plush toy of a man that's just like going around and like just trying to be hugged and all this stuff. But I mean, I think, like I said, like the stuff that works.
Plush toy of a man is like the perfect description.
You like that one?
Sorry, that was really inspired. Well done.
Well, thank you. But like I said, I think it's not so much that it's doing a lot better. It's just that I think what works is carried over here enough, and they're willing to be a little bit more risk taking in terms of allowing the characters to be a little bit more authentic and have some kind of jagged edges here that make the relationship seem a little bit more sincere by this point in the trilogy. But I mean, I think if we're rating all the films, like I think the first one was like a low B minus for me. The second one was a high B minus, and this one's a pretty comfortable B minus. Like I think they're all about the same in terms of quality, like I said, but I think this one, I was agreeable with it. I think what works about it, I was endeared to, but I don't think these movies are really doing much that stand out compared to the other. But I think compared to, like, from what I've heard, like the Kissing Booth movies, like this is a little bit more wholesome and endearing. Like I've heard those ones, and some of the other ones that are meant to appeal to the same audience don't quite work for the same reason.
Those films just aren't sanitary, if you ask me. That's
I mean, especially in COVID times. But yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to be thinking back on this trilogy a lot, but I enjoyed my time with them, and like I said, I think it is fun to get a little bit invested in these like kind of endearing teenagers who just want to do right by each other and want to have a relationship against the odds. And who am I to stop them? I hope things work out. I don't think it will, but maybe maybe
you're
it will.
honest.
Yeah, you think it's going to work out for them after this?
I don't really care. I don't
Sure.
think that's the point. It's I think the point is that they, they're going to do what's right for them, and they're going to support each other whether they're together or apart. And I feel like Abby is just like, what
this is adorable. I'm loving this. We're recording this on Valentine's Day, so this is all very appropriate conversation.
Absolutely.
I just think it's funny that you're just like, oh, I really like this. I'm really invested. And then when I ask you if you care if they get together or stay together, you're just, whatever.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
I care more about them individually, the fictional characters, than I do them as a couple. I don't think they need to be together to be happy necessarily. And I think that is one of the points of the movie. I think they could have made better, actually. But regardless, that's why I'm like a B minus on it, not like a B. But
likewise, yeah.
Great Valentine's Day movie. Great soundtrack as usual. I mean, I did joke with Will a little bit off the air about how like this movie is constantly playing music. Yeah. Like there's literally like a subplot about them finding their song. There's like music when she's walking upstairs. There's music when like just the most mundane things are happening. But at least the music itself is pretty good. So I'm not gonna lie. I was saving some songs to library. I'll put it out there.
You adding some Oasis to your Spotify playlist after this?
You know what? I was really nervous that was going to be a really cringe-worthy choice, like which Oasis song she's going to play, and I was like, okay, that's okay.
Which one is it? That's important. It's important to me.
It wasn't Wonderwall.
That's good.
It wasn't Wonderwall. It was I think the first song. I forget the name of it. It's the first song in that album, I think, which is always gets overlooked. So that's why I was kind of like, okay, and it makes sense. It's the first song she plays in the playlist. So there you go.
That's I can get behind that.
To All the Boys, Always and Forever is now available to stream on Netflix. And I think it's definitely a recommendation. If you like the first two movies, you know what the deal is. If you watch the first one and you're like Abby and you're like, whatever, it may not be worth like seeking out necessarily, but I don't think people will be disappointed overall. And also the film's not too long. It's a little under 2 hours. Thank you so much for listening to our show. Be sure to subscribe to Cinemaholics on your favorite podcast app of choice or find us on YouTube. See you all next time.